Story 1.
The Phantom Light over Brown Mountain. It was a freezing October dawn when veteran forest ranger Jake Morrison received the most disturbing call of his 23-year career. The voice on the other end trembled with pure fear, broken by panicked sobs. There are lights dancing over Brown Mountain. ... They're following me down the road. Dear God, they know I'm here. Jake knew well the local legends of North Carolina, but had never witnessed the phenomena with his own eyes. What began as another emergency call soon transformed into the most haunted experience of his life. The man on the phone was David Chen, a respected nature photographer who had come to document the wildlife of the Appalachian Mountains. When Jake arrived at Chen's last known location, he found only his abandoned car on the roadside, engine still warm, doors open. Expensive cameras scattered on the ground as if discarded in desperate haste. On the driver's seat was a note hastily scrawled, "The lights, they want me to follow them. I cannot resist. If someone finds this, don't come after me." What was at stake wasn't just another scared tourist report. 7 people had disappeared without a trace on Brown Mountain slopes. Experienced hikers, local guides, even a state geologist who knew every rock in the region. The clues were always the same: footprints that simply vanished in the middle of trails as if people had evaporated into thin air, and last-minute reports about mysterious lights. The victims' families begged for answers. State media began pressuring for a federal investigation, and tourism in the region plummeted dramatically. Jake knew his reputation, his job, and the safety of future expeditions depended on finding a rational explanation. The situation became even more complicated when Jake discovered that all disappearances followed a terrible pattern. They always happened during new moon nights, when the mountain darkness was almost impenetrable. The victims' final contacts always mentioned lights that danced or called. Even worse, soil analyses at locations where footprints disappeared showed impossible mineral composition, as if the ground itself had been altered by some unknown force. Jake began to suspect he was dealing with something far beyond his understanding. When Jake arrived at the observation point that cold October night, equipped with thermal cameras and long-range communication equipment, something completely challenged his experience and knowledge of the mountains. The lights weren't reflections from distant headlights or natural gases igniting. They pulsed with deliberate intelligence, moving in complex patterns that seemed to respond directly to his presence. Even more disturbing, when he turned on his high-powered flashlight, the lights slowly approached as if curious about him, studying him. The surrounding air became visibly colder, forming a dense mist that shouldn't exist at that temperature, and Jake could physically feel an ancient, melancholic presence watching his every move. The most terrifying moment came when Jake realized the lights were trying to communicate. They blinked in sequences that seemed intentional, formed geometric patterns in the air, and whenever Jake moved, they reacted immediately, as if anticipating his actions. When he tried to photograph the phenomenon, all his cameras failed simultaneously, and his radio began picking up whispers in a language he couldn't identify. Most disturbing was that despite the fear he felt, Jake also experienced an almost hypnotic attraction to the lights, a growing, inexplicable desire to discover where they wanted to take him. The terrifying truth revealed itself when Jake managed to resist the supernatural attraction and returned to consult the region's oldest historical records, including Cherokee documents preserved at the local tribal museum. The apparitions always occurred exactly in the same locations where, according to Cherokee oral tradition passed down through generations, sons and brothers in brutal massacres perpetrated by colonizing militias between 1760 and 1840. The lights weren't random phenomena. They were manifestations of souls in eternal search, mothers and wives who had died of heartbreak, carrying spiritual torches while desperately looking for loved ones who never returned home. Even more frightening, Jake discovered that recent disappearances weren't coincidences. People have followed these lights because the lost souls, in their infinite anguish, confuse the living with those they sought for decades. In their desperate search, they led visitors to the same locations where their loved ones had perished, creating an endless cycle of tragedy. Bodies were never found because the souls took them to dimensions between the world of the living and the dead, where they remained trapped in the same eternal search. Jake also discovered records of Cherokee shamans who tried unsuccessfully to perform liberation rituals for these souls. According to the documents, the women were trapped by a pain so deep it transcended death itself. Unable to accept that their loved ones would never return, they became involuntary guardians of a historical tragedy, condemned to eternally repeat their desperate search. Today, 17 years after that life-changing night, Jake still patrols Brown Mountain with a reverence and weight in his heart he didn't possess before. He learned that some scientific explanations fail in the face of pain that transcends death itself, and that certain historical wounds bleed through the centuries. On the darkest nights, when the cold wind whispers through ancestral pine trees carrying echoes of ancient laments, he still sees lights dancing in the distant valley, and in his heart he carries a truth that few dare accept. Jake never again allowed expeditions to happen during new moon nights, and always ends his mandatory safety briefings with a warning that few take seriously, but which he pronounces with the solemnity of one who knows the weight of each word. Respect the dead. Honor the pain of those who came before us, and always remember that in the mountains of Brown Mountain, not all rest in peace. Stay sharp, everyone. To all our amazing viewers and loyal subscribers, We know many of you watch our videos, but haven't subscribed yet. If you enjoy these stories and want to support this project, please hit subscribe, give the video a like, and share it. Now, enjoy what's coming up.
Story 2.
The Demonic Dog of Vallecruzes. Dr. Marcus Santana, a Brazilian wildlife specialist, veterinarian with 16 years of experience in the North Carolina mountains, thought he knew all the predators in the Vallecruzes region. His rural clinic had treated everything from black bear attacks to wounds caused by mountain lions. But nothing in his extensive career prepared him for the freezing November dawn when he was called to investigate a series of brutal mutilations in local cattle, all mysteriously occurring near the old St. John Church Cemetery. What he saw in the first carcass challenged everything he had learned about wild animal attacks. The first victim was a 600-pound Holstein heifer found in the pasture closest to the cemetery. The animal had been completely drained of blood, but there wasn't a single drop on the ground around it. Even more bizarre, the wounds followed impossible anatomical patterns, perfect surgical incisions at points of greatest blood vessel concentration. As if the attacker had advanced veterinary knowledge. Dr. Marcus had seen attacks from all native predators in the region, but never anything so precisely executed. What was at stake was much more than the local farmers' livelihood, who were already losing tens of thousands of dollars with each attack. The wounds on the animals followed patterns that challenged zoological logic, cuts too precise for natural claws, too deep for teeth of any known carnivore, and always located at points that suggested supernatural anatomical knowledge. Worse yet, the deaths only happened during new moon nights, when darkness was absolute and always on properties whose owners had somehow disturbed ancient graves to expand their pastures or build new structures. The situation worsened when Dr. Marcus discovered the attacks followed a specific geographic pattern. All occurred within a 3-kilometer radius of the ancestral Cherokee cemetery that had been partially destroyed during the church's construction in 1850. Historical records revealed that dozens of native graves had been desecrated at the time, with bones and sacred artifacts simply discarded to make way for the Christian temple's foundations. Fear spread through the community like a plague, and traditional families who had lived in the region for generations began abandoning their century-old farms. Dr. Marcus also noticed that the attacked farmers had something in common. All had recently removed stones or altered terrain near their properties, unknowingly disturbing sacred archaeological sites. The local Cherokee community, when consulted, revealed that the region had been an ancient tribal cemetery where warriors and shamans were buried, alongside their war dogs, animals considered sacred, responsible for protecting the spirit, the demonic dog of Vallecruzes. Dr. Marcus Santana, a wildlife specialist, veterinarian with 16 years of experience in the North Carolina mountains, thought he knew all the predators in the Valley Cruces region, until the dawn when he was called to investigate a series of brutal mutilations in local cattle, all occurring near the old St. John Church Cemetery. What he saw in that first carcass challenged everything he had learned about wild animal attacks. What was at stake was much more than the local farmer's livelihood. The wounds on the animals followed impossible patterns, cuts too precise for claws, too deep for wolf teeth, and always located at points that suggested supernatural anatomical knowledge. Worse yet, the deaths only happened during new moon nights, and always on properties whose owners had somehow disturbed ancient graves to expand their lands. Fear spread through the community like a plague, and entire families began abandoning their century-old farms. On the fourth night of investigation, Marcus finally came face to face with the creature. It wasn't an ordinary wolf, nor a bear, nor any animal that existed in zoology books. The beast measured more than 5 feet tall at the shoulder, with black fur that seemed to absorb moonlight and eyes that glowed like living embers. When Marcus tried to back away to his vehicle, the creature didn't attack. It followed him methodically, always maintaining the same distance, as if studying him, evaluating his intentions. The sound of its footsteps on the frozen ground echoed with a weight that seemed supernatural. The most terrifying revelation came when Marcus realized he wasn't dealing with a common predator, but with an ancestral guardian. Each attack had occurred exactly when someone had desecrated Cherokee graves predating European colonization. The beast didn't kill for hunger or territory. It executed ancient justice, punishing those who disrespected the dead with a precision that could only come from supernatural intelligence. Historical records confirmed. For more than 2 centuries, Cherokee shamans had invoked guardian spirits to protect their ancestors' graves from desecration. Today, 8 years after that terrible encounter, Dr. Marcus still treats injured animals in the region, but never forgot the lesson he learned that cold night. He discovered there are forces beyond human understanding, sentinels that protect the sacred boundary between the living and the dead. When farmers seek him out with strange stories, he always advises them with the same words: respect the land and those who came before us, for not all rest in peace.
Story 3.
The legend of Greenbrier Creek. The autumn air in the Appalachian Mountains is thick with a heavy, melancholic feeling that clings to the falling leaves. In 2018, a park ranger in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, whose name has been withheld, found his nightly patrol to be a lonely task. He was on duty patrolling the Greenbrier Creek Trail. The full moon cast long, eerie shadows from the trees onto the dirt road. Only the hum of his truck's engine and the wind whispering through the pines, broke the silence. Each night, a strange sensation that he was not alone haunted him. It wasn't a common fear, but a sharp awareness, as if the eyes of the forest were fixed on him. Local lore spoke of those who wait in the shadows, an entity that haunted the Greenbrier Creek area, luring travelers off the path. What was at stake? His sanity, his own safety. The forest has a way of twisting the mind, of making a person question what is real and what is just a legend. One night, he heard a sound that did not belong to the forest, a soft melody like a distant weeping. It was a tune that felt familiar, like a lullaby he couldn't quite place. With every step he took towards the sound, the melody grew clearer, but it never seemed to get louder. It echoed in his head, defying the logic of acoustics. Something was trying to lure him into the woods. The park ranger got out of his truck to investigate. The melody guided him to a clearing where fog gathered on the ground. The music stopped abruptly. He saw a figure in the distance, a woman in white who appeared to be dancing in a circle of glowing mushrooms. But as the light from his flashlight hit her, the image distorted. Her woman's form stretched, her arms twisted into branches, and the melody returned. This seemed to come from within the very forest itself. He ran. Panic overwhelmed him. He had seen an intense revelation or a hidden truth. He was not welcome there. The forest was not just a place. It was a creature. He managed to get back to his truck and drove as fast as he could without looking back. His hands trembled and cold sweat ran down his face. He never patrolled the Greenbrier Creek Trail alone again. The experience left a deep mark on him, a feeling of vulnerability he had never felt before. The Appalachian Mountains hid something older than civilization, and he had caught a disturbing glimpse of it. The question remains, what was it? An entity, a spirit, or the forest itself manifesting? Have you ever had a frightening experience in the mountains? Share your story in the comments.